Okay.
Did you not, did you come for training?
What?
No, did you come for the training?
No, I was
Refresh,
gone.
what's the-
I can do this.
Well, yeah, they're super easy.
Is everybody
Will somebody show me?
It should be on already.
just
Yeah,
happy
yeah,
to
just
come
tap
back
it.
live
You just
anyway?
tap it.
Okay, once you get your judge's ID number in, this first presentation will be number 49.
Well, we have to have two people in here.
Yeah.
I was gonna say. Martha, if you have a question, she can help.
Okay. These are easy to, because they set them up when I was doing this. And so he took in consideration, I'm like really low on technology, so they're super easy.
In that case, I think I can do it. You just
If I
have
can
to-
do it, you guys can do it, no problem. No,
It's actually easier.
Yes.
Oh,
That's what I said.
geez.
Andrew, you know, when he did this, he had me in mind, and so he made it super simple. Because that's what I needed it to be.
Until it doesn't work. Last year,
That's why there's two of us. One
Oh,
of us
sometimes
runs
you
it.
have things that happen.
last year mine didn't work and later on, Andrew had to catch me somewhere and he says, I still need you to score so-and-so because it didn't come through. I said, well, my computer didn't work. So I had to go find a different computer and score.
We've got extras this time, so.
He has got a, okay, yeah, here, we'll highlight this in pink, Andrew. So in case of emergency, he's on speed dial. I don't know if any of you know Andrew Corson. That kid is a genius.
Yes.
And he's one of, you know, usually when they're real quirky like that, their personality, Andrew's one of the nicest people you will ever meet. His family, well, his brother owns Pizza Americana now, but his family ran that. But he is just one of the nicest, kind-hearted person there is. And I know when I was doing this a couple of years ago, he would come by my room constantly. I didn't even have to call him. He would just drop by. Do you need any help? What can I help you with? And like I said, he was just very kind-hearted. He's very gifted in technology, so.
I'm up to the first one. That way. I think this one, they've got this one set up for.
Do you have a blank screen as your first one?
Yes, ma'am.
Because that wasn't turned up, but it is now. Okay, so.
Can find the little things. Completely chicken one.
Check your clicker.
This judge really fun.
Who? Okay, Mr. Perch, would you want to move over here so you can see the presentation a little easier?
It's gonna work out better. That'll work.
Okay, can you see everything well? If you're not, you're welcome to move to a different, so you can see the presentation as well as the tripod. Are you okay with the video?
You got 5 minutes, Connor, we can start on. So you got 5 minutes, we can start early.
Yes, we have to stay on time. Got everything you need?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Are my digits ready? I used to have a Rhode Island Red. She was a very intelligent bird. I would let her roam in the house as she pleased, and she would come sit by me on the couch. When she needed to go to the restroom, she would go outside, finish up, and come back inside. She was a very intelligent bird. Marie Main Jeslick. I am Connor Burke, and I advocate being friends with our fowl. People don't understand, but chickens are very intelligent creatures. They're very useful, very, how would you say it? Unique. They have the ability to learn, the ability to think quickly and act in order to save themselves and to produce in massive amounts. Which is why we have eggs at Walmart. We have turkey breast or chicken breast on the kitchen table during Thanksgiving. All fowl are related. Chickens originate from Gallus gallus or Gallus monkiva from Southeast Asia. They originally have many colors. They are known as the red jungle fowl. They are known to be found around all the forests and to be roaming the jungle, just pecking around at the bark, the insects, everything. And today we know them as chickens, Gallus domesticus. There are more than 350 different combinations of physical features found in chickens, just in the United States. This chicken here is standing up straight and has a strange wing structure. This is a deformity. Chickens are bred for sport. Originally, they were not bred as feeding stock in any form. They were bred for the sport of fighting, for gambling. And now we have many different breeds with many different purposes. Just 3 of those breeds are the White Leghorn, the Delaware, or the Rhode Island Red. The Leghorn is a thinner bird, and it specializes in laying eggs. It can lay efficiently, quickly. The Delaware is a meat bird. It grows plump, but it doesn't lay as many eggs as the Leghorn. And the Rhode Island Red, it's a hybrid. It is made to grow almost as plump as the Delaware and lay almost as efficiently as the Leghorn. And with these birds, they all have different characteristics or physical features that you will see. As the Leghorn, they have thinner legs. The Delaware have thicker, chunkier legs. And if you were to cull a Leghorn, you wouldn't have much on the dinner table. It'd be enough for maybe 1 person. Maybe 2 if you're lucky. But the Delaware can provide for a small family. When chickens first start laying eggs, they start out about the size of a quarter. Then they grow 30 to 50% larger after their first molting. And several years down the road, maybe 3, maybe 5, the eggs can be as large as a goose egg. They are very interesting Because if you take one egg, the first egg of chicken legs, that same amount of calcium in that egg or in that shell will be the same amount of calcium 3 years down the road, covering a larger egg. Hence, the shell becomes thinner and thinner, and it's riskier for that chicken to lay. If they do lay, it's harder, or they might lay shellless eggs, which does not look very appetizing. There are many good and bad sides to having chickens, and if you look on the bright side, you'll be with me here. You get fresh eggs every morning. A chicken can lay 1 egg a day. It takes 14 hours of sunlight to regulate that chicken's laying period. You can have actual sunlight or you can have artificial light, but 14 hours of light period is what regulates it. And yes, it does take time. You get 1 egg a day from 1 chicken. However, if you have several chickens, you have half a dozen eggs in Willow Springs because you can only have 6 chickens at one time. And it's a big misconception that chickens can't lay without a rooster. They don't need a rooster. If you want more chickens, you need a rooster.
Yeah.
There's many psychological benefits to having a chicken because they are very intricate, very sociable creatures. When raised from a small little chick around people all the time, they can be very fun. They are more interesting than the average animal. They can be smarter than a dog. I don't know about you, but if you have a dog and a chicken, which one's going to provide for you? Usually it's the chicken, unless it's a hunt dog, in which case you got to do the work too. It takes a little bit of money. However, if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, it doesn't take that much. You will have 6 eggs a day if you have 6 hens. In which case you can sell them because oftentimes people that raise chickens for eggs have too many eggs. They don't know what to deal with them or how to deal with them. They cook them, yeah. They sell them, yeah. And a lot of times they don't even have enough buyers to sell them. You'll have 6 dozen eggs in your fridge and you won't know what to do. You're confused. They provide manure. If you have a garden, this is the best manure you could ever have. It has more phosphates, more nitrates than chicken and cow manure, the horse and cow manure combined. It's an amazing thing. However, if you don't be careful, it will burn your plants. You want to wait at least 3 months and rotate it in a compost or in a pile so that it's ready by the time you need to plant. Otherwise, you're going to have some toasty plants. They require a little bit of space. With my project, I made the necessary requirements by the USDA to build a small coop for 2 hens comfortably where they do not need to be removed from their coop most of the time. It allows for the manure to be dropped immediately through to the grass, so you do not have much cleanup. It allows for them to comfortably nest, lay, and roost at night. They are warm. They are safe. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a good deal to me. Someone feeds me every day, and I have a nice place to sleep. After about 6 years, the chicken has become a pet. You can either keep it, or it can become meat. You cull the chicken. You have dinner. As Mr. Helms said, we keep them about 3-4 years, then we invite them to dinner. Yeah, they make messes, but if you prepare for them, you ain't got to clean them up. There are some necessary preparations, such as nesting space, light, feed, and actual housing. 6 hens will use 1 nesting box. You do not need to provide 1 nesting box for each hen because they will share 1 box. You don't have to provide an overly excess amount of space. And a lot of times if you provide 1 nesting box for each hen, they'll still only use 1. It's just wasted space. The light, as I said earlier, 14 hours of light regulates the laying of a chicken. If you have 6 chickens, you provide 8 hours of sunlight and then 6 hours of lamplight, you'll have eggs in the morning and they'll be delicious. The feed. Throughout the course of a hen's life, you have to feed them either 2 different types of feed or 3, depending on what you're doing. As chicks, you want to start them on a starter or grower feed. And if you're having meat hens, you want them on a fattening feed to where they'll become plump, healthy, good for eat. Or if you're having laying hens, you want them to have a laying feed that provides all the calcium and the nutrients that they need in order to produce those eggs without having to take the calcium from their own bones to lay them. The housing, the shelter, if you will. For 1 hen, you need at least 2-3 feet of space. However, if you're going by the standards I used, 4.5 to 5 feet for the housing portion is all that's necessary. For 2 hens, I have more than adequately taken what was there, what needed to be there, and provided. By failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. Benjamin Franklin said this, and he didn't apply it to chickens, but if you're not preparing, you're definitely failing. Either your hens will die, or you won't have anything to begin with. In the course of my project, I worked to provide structure or support, provide safety and airflow, ventilation. Protection here, chicken wire, is a cheap, but it works. It's a sort of protection that provides the safety or the sense of safety that the chickens need. With the ventilation, a small draft could do more damage to a chicken's health than a 30-mile-an-hour wind. So if you really want to kill your chickens, just let them have the door open. Don't throw them in a tornado. The support. With what I built, 3 people can sit on that comfortably, structurally, and it won't collapse. If 3 people could sit on that, I think 2 chickens can survive. There's some bad things, some detriments, if you will. You have another responsibility. You have to take the time to take care of them. But if you have kids, well, they got another chore. They learn to take care of an animal. And if they take care of chickens, they'll take better care of a dog or a cat throughout their entire life. And some benefits, you get food. You either get eggs, or in 3 years, you got 6 chickens in your freezer. You got a meal for weeks. And a hen will provide breakfast for you nonstop. However, if you're in her molting season, after her molting season, you got bigger eggs, better meal. It's a responsibility, yeah. That responsibility turns into something precious. You want to take care of them. They're great creatures. They're wondrous creatures. They're fun to take care of. They're fun to watch. If anybody's just sat there and watched a chicken, they're humorous. After you're done with taking care of a chicken for a day, you feel like you've accomplished something. You have grateful birds, healthy birds, and in 3 years you got a meal. They're very self-sufficient. They will hide themselves if a predator is nearby. They will take care of themselves and each other. And if you have an older hen, they are the best hens for being mothers. If you have one old hen and 6 or 5, if you will, here we can only have 6. If you have one old hen and 5 young ones, you keep that old hen. You don't cull her, because she's going to take better care and teach those chickens actually how to survive. Those young ones will just let the chickens die. I never said it would be easy. I only said it would be worth it. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions? Yes?
So you said you need, that they need 14 hours of light.
Yes.
If you put a light in the barn, is there such thing as too many hours of light?
If you were to put light in the barn, I would set it on a light timer. Like, you know those little sensors, or we use them for Christmas lights a lot of the time. I would use one of those to shut it off after a certain period of time, because depending on how it is and how you have it set up, how long they're outside, they will need to take their time in the dark.
How did you get involved in this?
At first, I wanted to build something bigger. I just love working with my hands. At first, I wanted to build a shed. But that would have been a much bigger project, and I don't think I would have been done with it. And frankly, I love animals. They're great. They're fun. They're energetic, enjoyable. You can just have a blast.
One can certainly see your passion for it. That is really a grand thing.
Thank you. I enjoy it.
I was just curious on that Rhode Island Red that was your pet that came in the house.
Yes.
Is that still alive, or did you eat it?
Oh, that was a story from somebody else.
Oh.
If that were my bird, it would have never been in the house in the first place. Because I would have been too worried. Oh, she's got to go to the bathroom. I'm going to have a hole in my couch. They will burn plants. They will also burn through leather.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Connor.
Thank you.
1621.
Good job. Very nice. So you can see okay, twist it around.
Oh, you did this.
This is ID number 43 on your judge's packet. Yeah, 43. She only has 4 judges. And they are all here. Make sure it works.
Are my judges ready? Hearing that you have ovarian cancer makes you weak in the knees and takes your breath away. You think of the road that lies ahead: chemotherapy, losing your hair, losing the organs that brought or that could bring your future children into the world, and you allow yourself to think the unthinkable. You might not make it, and you allow yourself to sink further into helplessness. Good evening, my name is Madison Porter, and for my senior research paper, I wanted to educate people on ovarian cancer and provide financial support to its victims. I chose this product because within the past 5 years, ovarian cancer has had a significant impact on my family's lives, as both my aunt and grandma were diagnosed. My aunt had stage 2 ovarian cancer and is on the road to recovery, and my grandma had stage 4 ovarian cancer, and she just finished her chemotherapy. As my family's lives turned upside down, I had many questions, such as, are they in pain? Will they survive? And what happens if they relapse? All of these questions that I had were left unanswered because I lacked the knowledge on ovarian cancer. So when we had to choose a senior research paper, I instantly chose ovarian cancer. I wanted to learn about the disease that not only had impacted my family's lives, but that also impacts the lives of 22,000 women yearly as well. In normal cells, they reproduce, and if a cell is damaged, they will not reproduce, and the cell will die. But that is not the case with ovarian cancer. Instead, it reproduces the damaged cells, which leads to uncontrolled growth, which causes cancer. If left undetected, the cancer can spread to other parts of the body. There are 4 stages of ovarian cancer: stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. Stage 1 is where the ovarian cancer has spread to one or both of the ovaries and has not spread anywhere else. In stage 2, the cancer has spread to one or both of the ovaries and is in the pelvic. In stage 3 of ovarian cancer, it has spread to either one or both of the ovaries and has spread to the abdomen. And in stage 4, the cancer has spread to either both of the ovaries and also other parts of the body as well. Some of the symptoms that are associated with ovarian cancer is nausea, diarrhea, pelvic pain, and changes in appetite. The main treatment options is chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. Chemotherapy is one of the most common treatment options as it has been around longer and more people trust this method. During chemotherapy, it is inserted through an IV, which is usually in your lower arm or your vein. In radiation, it is used to remove the cancer. And radiation, it destroys the cancer cells. There are many side effects that are associated with these treatment options, however. For example, along with chemotherapy killing the cancer cells, it also kills the healthy cells as well. and you will feel fatigued, and you experience hair loss. And radiation, you feel fatigued as well. And in surgery, you will have pain or tenderness in your lower abdomen. So for my product, I wanted to host a basketball game. I've always loved basketball, and I've been playing it ever since 5th grade, and I've fell in love with the game. And I wanted to do something that nobody has ever done for their senior project, which was hosting the first ever teal night game for ovarian cancer awareness. I had t-shirts that I made that were worn by my teammates during the warm-ups, and I also presented a speech before the game, and my aunt was actually standing beside me while I presented, and I honored my aunt, which was a really cool thing. And I tried not to get emotional during it, but it was pretty hard. This behind me is an example of my t-shirt design. It was Uber prints, and it was a lot harder designing the shirts than I thought. So you first started and you picked your color, and then you can add the text that you wanted and add images from your computer or images that you wanted to use. And then you can either save or load the image. Behind me is my final t-shirt design that is right here as well. And it was worn, like I said, during our warm-ups before the game. And the fans who purchased the t-shirts wore them as well. The shirts cost $10, and after paying back the t-shirt company, I raised over $630, and I presented it to Cancer Research of the Ozarks, which is in Springfield, Missouri. It was by far one of the most humbling moments of my life to see that my senior project benefited me, and I know other families as well that have went through this disease. So it was a very humbling moment. The challenges was designing the shirts. I'm pretty picky, so it was hard finding a shirt that I liked. I kept going back and forth, and I had 3 t-shirt designs that I liked, but ultimately decided on this one. And presenting the speech in front of the crowd, because I don't really like talking in front of people as much. Some people enjoy it. I'm pretty relaxed, and I don't like talking in front of people. And it was also hard with my aunt being there and not getting emotional. So those were my challenges. Like I previously stated, when you hear you have ovarian cancer, it can make you weak in the knees because you feel like you might not make it. However, we need to continue to have hope and new medicine, and we need to continue to hope in the future for the advancements in medicine for ovarian cancer. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
Yes. Okay. What are the factors that predispose one to have ovarian cancer? Is it a hereditary thing, or?
It can be hereditary or genetics. Usually if cancer was in your family, you're at a higher risk of developing this cancer.
What is the average age? Is there such a thing as an average age for ovarian cancer? When does it show up?
Yeah, usually it's in the mid-50s, but there's been some cases where some teenagers have even developed ovarian cancer, but it's usually middle-aged women that develop it.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Okay.
You know, I had you as a 5th grade student, and you did not like to talk.
Thank you.
Any more questions? All right, thank you, man.
Thank you.
Martha, are you doing okay with that?
Absolutely.
I said, he designed that with me in mind, so if I can do it, probably a kindergartner can do it
Thanks a lot, pal.
anytime. Probably kindergartner can do it better than I do.
Oh, yeah, I found that's true.
Thank you. Are you Haley?
Yes.
I know. Yeah, because the other guy was standing next to it. Yeah, they do. I wonder if that, yes, kind of. Yeah, she needed to stand over here. Well, and she was nervous, so, and that makes it worse when you're nervous. She did a very good job. Mhm. Brianna Beck. They're all here, the judges are here.
I got a problem.
Oh, no, see, I forgot already. Judges for Brianna, her her ID number is 81. 81. Mr. Kirch, do you need to be somewhere else? Thank you, judges, for judging and taking your time out of your schedule. But it's really good that you guys, we appreciate you doing it and taking your time, so thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate you taking your time.
next year, would it be possible to give us a little bit more time to make our comments?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Okay, well, all righty then.
Well, you're talking to the wrong person, first of all.
I know, I probably
Even if you
should
weren't talking,
have, like, started making comments during the speech, so next time I think I'll do that. Because
well, like the first
Part of
speech,
it,
he went way too long.
a little bit, okay.
Yeah, he was like way too long. No, no. You can sit in any of those openings over there. Mr. Hummel, is there any more chairs out in the hall that we can snag?
I can.
Yeah.
We can just take that one.
Okay. He is, her grandmother's here. Sorry, I didn't.
Mr. Hummel, I have a problem. It won't take my comments.
Uh-oh, maybe they didn't like your comments.
They were wonderful. I expect you. Okay, this is for 40, I put it in here. And the last one. And I went down to submit. I've done this a couple of times. Yeah.
Check to make sure, it said that if you leave one, that doesn't have a.
Let's take it out.
Because you're like,
You know, I think I got one. I got that one, and the other one. Said, look, your quality is a great job. So it's just, it's not taking it just won't do anything. The judges have signed up. So that's the problem.
That was 81, wasn't it?
What's your judge's number? Is that-
14.
That's the same as it was with the first one, right?
just didn't take that. I don't know, because we talked about the judges ID here. And I'm on here,
Did you click all of everything?
wait a minute,
Maybe you didn't click everything.
let's try it.
Perfect, thank you.
She said she was gonna get there.
Maybe she's a quiet little glitch.
There you go. All right.
It just, maybe it just took more time.
Maybe you were talking.
What's her number?
Randy already said that.
81.
Am I not supposed to be in?
No, it's great. I was gonna help you, you already got one.
81,
Thank you.
this presentation. Okay, you might want to check. I kind of stand up here to the side. Like that.
Are my judges ready? Time. Something that is all around us, yet we never have enough of. Something we always want more of, but when we have more of it, we seem to take it for granted. Time to us is just that. It is just a word. But for animals, time is everything. Every 10 seconds, an animal is abused. Every minute, 6 animals are abused. Every hour, 360 animals are abused. And every single day, 8,640 animals will have been abused. My name is Brianna Beck, and for my senior project, I chose to research animal abuse. The reason I chose my product was because all through life, I have heard people tell me how animal abuse is not important because it's not human abuse. But I set out to prove them wrong because animal abuse does directly link to domestic violence and human things that are all around us. People do not believe that animal abuse is an important factor in our lives, but it really is because animal abuse has been proven to link to domestic violence and women and children. A researcher at Sony did a study of 100 domesticated abused women versus a sample of non-abused women. 54% of the women that were abused proved that they had been abused and their animals had been abused at the same time, while only 5% of the women that had not been abused reported that their animals had also been abused. Every day we walk through life and we see people on the streets, but we don't know what's going on in their lives. In a lifetime, 1 in 4 women will have been domestically abused. Another way that animal abuse links with us is in children. Animal abuse can be a sign of aggressive behavior early in life for children. It can also be a disorder in conduct, or it can be mental. Pictured here is Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was just a normal boy, or so people thought. Jeffrey Dahmer used to cut the heads off of his dogs when he was little and stick them on sticks for people to see. Later, Jeffrey Dahmer went to prison for the dismemberment, rape, and cannibalism of 17 men and children. There are 2 main categories of animal abuse: animal neglect and intentional animal abuse. Animal neglect is the lack of basic care for an animal. For example, food, water, shelter, and veterinary care. There are many different types of intentional animal abuse: genetic manipulation, experimentals, dog fighting, puppy mills, animal hoarding, animal testing are just a few of these. For my research, I decided to choose the 3 most likely ones in the United States. The first one is dog fighting. Dog fighting is when animals are put together in a ring where they maim each other or kill each other. It's always to the death. In the United States, even though it is legal in all states, there are over 40,000 participants that participate in dog fighting every single year in the United States. Dog fighting is something that happens all around us. We don't get a choice of what happens, neither do the animals. In a ring, animals are either killed or be killed. That is the motto when it comes to dog fighting. There are many different injuries that animals are susceptible to. The main thing is they rip each other apart. They use their teeth and they hold on and they grab to whatever they can, which can lead to broken bones, open wounds. Usually animals either die or they succumb to their injuries later on, and they do not get veterinary care. The animals that lose are killed. Fighting dogs are trained in inhumane ways.
Fighting dogs are chosen from birth based on their DNA and based on the mother and father dogs and what they think they can produce. Fighting dogs are often, when they are born, they are often chosen between what kind of things that they have, what kind of things that stick out to them. Animals and puppies that are not chosen, they're either killed on birth or they are used for older dogs to be bait dogs. Animals are kept on heavy chains just inches away from each other, where it leads to more aggression in animals. And every time that they think the animal has already reached its muscle capacity for the heavy chains, they add on more weights, which leads to more muscle capacity for fights where they can get bigger in fights. Many drugs are used in training fighting dogs, many kinds of narcotics and steroids, which pump up their ability to fight and aggressiveness, and sometimes it even makes it to where they cannot feel the fighting. It numbs them, so people use that in fighting to make it to where animals are more aggressive and more likely to attack each other. Puppy mills is a big problem in the United States. Female dogs are not given the opportunity to recuperate through every birth. Female dogs are bred over and over. Many female dogs are killed during birth, before they give birth, or they're killed shortly after when they feel like they can no longer produce puppies. Puppies are taken away from their mothers at a very young age, sometimes even directly after birth, which leads to many problems with behavioral problems when they are older and when they go to certain homes. Most of the time when you see puppies in pet stores, most of the time they are from puppy mills and they have come to that. Contrary to belief, it is a big problem, especially in Missouri. In Missouri, there are over 1,600 unrecognized puppy mills. Animal hoarding is another problem that we see in the United States. Animal hoarding is where so many animals are kept in a small space to where it is not really likely and not capable of their living. Many times it is widowed women, and it usually starts innocent. It's usually a couple animals taken in off the street by elderly women that feel like they're doing the right thing. But in reality, they don't have the proper needs that they can care for them, and it gets out of hand. They continue to reproduce to where the situation gets so out of hand that they are unable to contain it anymore. There have even been cases where there's been so out of hand and the ammonia levels have been so high, there has been women found dead at their houses due to so many pets were being fed off of by the animals. There are many diseases that people can get from the animals. There are also high-level ammonia that is present throughout the house. And diseases are passed on between animals throughout the house, which leads to mostly all of them getting diseases, which can lead to their deaths or even human deaths. For my project, I chose to host an animal adoption event at the West Plains Park, People's Park, with the West Plains Animal Shelter. I felt like people don't give recognition enough to rescued animals that comes from all these different types of situations. Before my event, I sold t-shirts for $20 each, where $5 of each t-shirt went directly into helping get things for the animal shelter that they desperately needed. During my event, I had a balloon pop, a puppy kissing booth, face painting, a silent auction, and a donation-only lunch. There was many people that showed up to help through the event. I called places including Silver Dollar City, St. Louis Zoo, Springfield Zoo, and many other attractions and local restaurants. And many people donated to the silent auction to help for the animal shelter because many people see the need of these animals. I had many challenges when it came to doing this event. Some of my challenges including finding businesses that are willing to donate, because some people don't get that this is a big deal, or it's just another event, or it's just another senior project. When in reality, we may not be able to change what's going on, but the little things that we do help later on, and the little things that we do build up to bigger things. Another problem I had was finding a location. It was October, and let's be honest, it's Missouri. We never know what the weather's going to be anymore. So I had to find a place that would be okay if it rained, would be okay if it was sunny, it wouldn't be too hot, too cold. And I had to find a place where many people could come to experience this and learn from this, because there's many people that don't recognize what animals go through and what's going on in animals' lives. Because it's not human abuse, we don't really think about it as often as we do child abuse. But in reality, it is all around us. In conclusion, time to us may just be a word, but for animals, Time is everything. We may not be able to change the whole world, but today I challenge you to change these animals' lives one at a time. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it true that these dog fighting creeps go around and steal dogs, or they take free dogs and use them for bait?
They are more likely to use these animals as bait because they actually spend a lot of money on these dogs because they want to win these fights. A dog fight can bring up to $500,000 for winning. So they're going to do everything they can to get the best dogs. So most of the time, if they take animals, unless you have expensive dogs that they want to use, they're mostly used as bait dogs. Any other questions?
Is there anything in the law for these animal abusers? We had a situation where a person in our neighborhood badly abused a dog. And the dog is safe now, it's at our house. And I was told that unless we got the camera of him abusing the dog, that nothing could be done because it's, your word against his. Is there anything that's coming up in the law that's going to be better to protect these poor animals?
I have no idea what's coming up in the law, but I do know that you have to have actual footage proof or actual real proof in order to get something done about that, because hearsay doesn't really matter to the law. You have to have visual proof or actual proof of the incident.
Do you feel like those who breed dogs contribute to the problem?
I feel like in a way that they do. It just depends on how you're breeding them or what you're doing with them. But I feel like in a way that we do contribute to it when we breed dogs, because there are so many dogs out there looking for homes and we're just repopulating them. There's so many dogs out there that are getting killed with this and we're bringing more into this life.
More questions?
All right. Thank you guys for your time.
One other that I didn't sign up for, so it doesn't matter.
Yes.
I haven't had doctors all the
So Martha's still here, Deanna's still here, and we have Julie, James, and Brandon. Oh, it doesn't start till 6. You got 10 minutes. See, they got extra time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, the next one is 34.
34.
34. Yeah, the next one doesn't start for 10 minutes. She started a little bit early, so we kind of need to, she came in and
She just got in
Ready to
there.
go.
Did it,
ready to
yeah.
go, get it over with. Or she did a nice job.
She did.
She's
She's got strong.
Just makes you sick.
She's got a strong
Something
voice.
like that.
I know, it's sad. Breaks her heart.
I believe that if you'll do that to an animal,
Oh, yeah.
you do it to the person.
Mhm. I think they've proven that
Oh,
long ago, but yeah, those people are just,
they're crazy.
they're not even that good.
Did you just leave this?
What do you
Do I just leave this?
Did you submit it and
Yeah.
then at the top, yes.
Do I do exit or do I do?
You can actually come to Snow. There's a blue.
Click here to start
Yeah,
over?
click there. That way they can come in and just, there you go.
Bye. Have fun.
Yes, thank you.
Try to find everybody.
What? Thank you.
You're welcome. I know, I have to tell you. Thank you. All right.
See ya, bye.
We had 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Pretty dog.
Like every time we get home, it's up to you, like lose his body.
First one we
My dog came.
Is this the big one
Yeah.
that came for church?
Yeah, the one that got loose.
Oh, it's fine, it was cute.
Yeah.
We got a big puppy about a month ago. We have an Australian Shepherd.
Yeah.
He's just 4 months old. I wasn't planning on getting another dog. We haven't had a dog for about 6 years since our other ones have died. And I don't know, do you know Jennifer Smith? She works for that Mansfield over there.
Yeah. As soon as he figures it out,
She
he
lives
takes
out
off.
somewhere, I don't remember.
Like 2
But she
weeks
raises
or whatever.
Australian Shepherds, who like show dogs and farm dogs. And this one had eyelashes growing in the
Whenever
sit
he
out.
brought him back, he was like.
And so she would, instead of, I don't know why she just didn't sell it for cheaper for the farm dog, she would just find him and get home. And I said, well, if you don't find anybody else, we'll take him. Well, then
He's
I
like
would say,
going out
get
like
pictures
3
of
more
pictures
times.
of
And
the
the first
dog.
time,
So, but he's a male.
Oh.
I didn't want to buy a male, but he's getting neutered in about another month. So hopefully he won't be around the neighborhood. I don't.
Like 23 acres.
Yeah.
You have to watch out for him. Well.
We had a blue here. When we very first moved out to the farm. One of the guys that worked for Laius brought him to work, brought her to work. One of the best dogs we ever had. Good watchdog. Hates cats though, that was the best.
She's only in there for a couple
You're
minutes.
exactly right.
Yeah, well, that night.
There's no cats.
We have 3 cats we've had we got from Chris Cochran. We've had them now for like, I think they're gonna be
Kind of figured out.
3 or 4 years old this
So
summer.
back to the bottom and she left the door. Until
Oh,
nobody was there. So I
34.
Somebody might see.
I forget to say that, but they're not crazy about the puppy.
I mean,
He's a big, he already weighs about 25 pounds.
Yeah.
And he just turned 4 months old. He's got big legs and big feet.
See, that's why we were.
I said I wasn't getting another dog, so I didn't want to go to Vegas. I didn't want to.
No, I am a sophomore.
That's exactly what we got.
That goes here.
College?
Nope. High school. I'm doing this for community service hours, so I can be in National Honor Society next year.
That's why I didn't want to go to dog. Those other ones are very.
Yeah, so I'm excited to do that.
You start watching the old.
You also get ideas for
Yeah. I know, I'm already thinking, and I have 2 years. A year.
I loved it to death. Me and my brothers, we walked outside.
It's very
And right as we walked
He's
outside.
died
we
next
saw
to
her
us.
outside.
It's like, I'm not getting that, that's it.
I bet. Do you like doing this?
Well, we had a puppy up there,
But I,
but I mean, he's just.
You know, it's wonderful to see what students can do.
And she,
I would have never had one.
Larry just put his shoes inside the house, and then he's hard to have to visit or put him in the house. He'll outgrow that.
So did it take you 8 years
I mean, I couldn't
to
say
do
no
your,
when he
to
brought
get
it
your
home.
doctorate?
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
So we had it for a long
Yeah, I'm thinking about going.
You're right.
Well, I don't know if I could do 8
Yeah,
years
some
in
of us-
college.
And they are cute.
The thing is that
But yeah.
you have to look at what the rest of you want, what you really want. And,
She is.
when
Who
you-
is it? I'm Yorkie.
the thing
Oh,
is
yeah,
that
they're
you have
cute.
to,
She's,
to really
I think she's
be
3 years
serious
old.
right from the beginning.
She has
Right.
as much energy as
But
she
you're
did when she
right,
was
so
little.
obviously,
Wow.
you've got what it takes mentally.
Oh, when we first got her, she was just like, just little
Oh.
baby.
My brother's an RN,
And
so I've
we have
been
a
thinking
picture
about
of her
that too.
where my mom took a picture like standing over, and it just looks like my mom.
You know, there's,
And now
there's
she's like
so
all more color.
there's so many opportunities for
She
women.
runs into
That
walls.
we're back
Oh,
now,
this
going through
and
the second ice age when the dinosaurs
And our,
were
like,
the-
coffee table was so close to
They
our
didn't even want
couch
one.
that she can make laps around
Those
it.
programs.
So one time she was
But
going
then
too fast
he
and she didn't make it, she just
Being
went straight to the couch.
Don't
And she like looked around like anyone saw her.
Settle for less.
She's
Yeah.
my dad's dog. So.
And you're a good example.
You live down the road from us in a 2-story
Uh-huh.
house on down.
I have to make sure. Yeah,
Martha,
it's a live stream.
Rocky,
We have 1 subscriber.
His dog was stolen out of the jar off of the leash.
Okay, so I'm leaving at,
There are bad people out
I'm gonna go watch one at 6:40, and then I'll be back.
Right after we
Okay,
got, they were by our
I'm
house, really
Okay,
small,
so-
and our,
And I
it was
also
Larry's outside,
and someone else will be coming in.
kind of.
And I'll probably leave at 7:20. So that works okay. Okay, I think we'll be okay.
By his house, and then
Are
they
you
stole his
strangers?
dog,
No,
and it was
I'm a
a strange
sophomore.
took the
Oh, you're
whole-
sophomore,
Mhm.
okay. I'm
It was a big
You're a freshman.
Well, you know, they like beagles for big dogs.
Feels like yesterday I was in
Very
class.
funny.
But those kind of
See,
people,
I really, that was one of my.
Yes.
because it's just, to me,
My
to torture an animal.
Oh,
I
Or
remember doing our
It
project,
is
like,
sickening. What they do
I
is like,
did camping
you know
with
about what
my-
Oh, is
happened
it
to
a
the
poster?
dog.
Yeah,
I have that.
I said,
all
we
my
have, my
days.
service dog, I didn't
I
know
was
this.
debating.
My
Do
service
that.
dog
So
is a
much
rescue
work.
dog, and what had happened was, the guy that had him lived like 2 miles from us,
We just.
and he shot him, hit his teeth in, broke his leg, broke his ribs.
a service dog?
No, he is a service dog now because I had him trained. And he came to our house and he started to death and bleeding. Well, I let him in.
softball. Oh, really?
And,
That's probably what I'm gonna do.
We got him taken care
Oh,
of.
really?
And, I had him trained to be a
Like,
service
I know I'm
dog.
just a freshman, but like.
He's a
I
medical
don't
service
really
dog
set up,
now.
like, a camp.
But he's an old dog. He's a very old dog.
Or is this one that, yeah, you have your car at church sometimes?
Yep, he's,
Up here.
unfortunately, he's suffering for what they did to him. He's got the bad arthritis. He's still got the shot in him from where he was shot.
Oh, my gosh.
They can't get it out. It's all through his body.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Oh. Well, that's a very easy mistake to make.
This one's 34, right?
Yes, this one is 34.
I built that tree treated box stand right there. It's actually for hunting. And there's a ladder there now, but that was before the deadline. That lifts up and over for safety reasons, so you don't hit the gun on it and accidentally knock the side off or accidentally misfire. So those are probably 2 to 3 feet. And they're concrete. They're concreted in the bottom, which are pretty heavy. I did it first, but then you see here, I had to go back out and I redid it and put the concrete in. The first time I did the concrete and it didn't work out that well.
You might want to find this with a quicker.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it
this
one? No, this one.
Yeah.
That way it might- it's easier.
Is it over here?
Over there. Are you- Everything's ready. Got it. You got a couple minutes.
All right.
Get your breath a minute. Is everybody on session ID number 34?
Yes.
I'm behind, but
Let's go, pick up the pace.
Are my judges ready?
yes, yes.
How would you feel to not only be able to provide for your family, but also be able to provide for others? Many hunters that are a part of the conservation department donate many of their food and hide and furs to the conservation for other people. Hi, my name is Jacoby Sheets, and I'm going to be talking to you about hunting, sport, and wildlife management. The history of hunting dates back since the beginning of time. We used it as a food source from the beginning until we founded America. Indians on the plains hunted buffalo and deer in early times. Farmers rely on hunters a lot. A lot of times they will bounce off of each other. Coming from rural Missouri, we understand this because if you ever have someone come out and hunt on your land, a lot of times they will donate some of the food to you. American rituals. The American Indians, they use rituals such as taking a bite out of the heart or wiping blood on their face as a way to show respect for the animal while it's sending off into the afterlife. Food. Not only in America, but in other countries such as in Bio, where the population is overgrown, but they are in poverty, they rely on hunting, and the hunters provide for their families. These professionals donate over 50% of their meat to these high populated, very in poverty countries. Money. Last year, $800 million was raised in taxes such as tags and funds. 300 million of it was in equipment such as guns and ammo and your camo you use to hunt. And only $3.5 million is kept for the actual conservation agent to themselves. PETA's belief is that most of these hunters are out to hurt the game. They just do it for the fun. Actually, due to the Aggressive Doe Act, hunters are encouraged to hunt a 3-to-1 ratio over these does to thin out the does and pick up more of a higher population of bucks. But hunters were recorded and said that they did not like killing this many does because they felt like they were going to decrease the population so bad that they could go into extinction. Here was the start of my project. This was the base platform in which they would be sitting on and what would be holding them while they were hunting the deer. I had to make sure that all of my cuts were even, because if they were not even and straight, they would not line up with the boards on the outside and the supports. If they were uneven, a lot of times you could not get the screw to drill in there correctly, and it would make for a weak base. And I had to make sure everything was in place. As you can see, these boards are lined up one after the other. A lot of times without those supports being in place, the wood would try to drift on you and move from side to side, and that is not safe for a hunting environment, especially when you need top safety for hunting when you're carrying a gun and a knife. And there was the final box. It had to be very sturdy because with the winds and very harsh weather in Missouri, such as rain, snow, and it is very off and on around Missouri all around the year. It needed to be able to withhold the mild weather. It needed to be spacious in case later on in the future I wanted to bring someone else up there with me and enlighten them on how and everything I have learned over the years in hunting. And these are my supports. They are approximately 2 feet in the ground, and they are held by quickcrete so that it gives it extra strength. They had to be straight for these supports to sit level and not be crooked and falling over. They had to be rugged. The terrain in Missouri is very rugged and rocky, and in order for my supports to be able to hold up, they had to be just as rugged as the ground they were standing on. Here was my final product. I want it to supply for generations above, because one day I want to have kids too, and I want to be able to teach them how to interact with environment and be able to hunt and provide food for their families when they are older. And interacting with the youth is a big thing. A lot of times they want to sit and play on their phones instead of go outside. And with building this, you can take them out and show them the man-to environment, get a deep breath, and be able to experience what it feels like to be outside and the energy and you get from being able to complete a kill. And the interaction with the environment, a lot of people do not know this, but it helps a lot just to go outside and take a breath and just think about how that tree was made, how it formed itself. And with working with wood, at one time that was a part of a tree, and it was nice to be able to use the resources I have from Missouri and other places in the U.S. to my benefit for a long time in my life. I had a really good learning process, and there is actually a good story behind those supports. A week prior to me putting the concrete, I actually just tried to stick them in the ground without the concrete, and we had probably about 20-mile-per-hour winds throughout that week, and it had been rainy, and the mud had gotten to where it was all loose, and that wind had scattered all of my supports all over the place. So I was like, well, that's not going to work. So I had to go back out and rethink of how I was going to do it. So I went down to the local lumber yard and bought some concrete and got them put back in even and straight, and poured that concrete and used a pick to compact it, make sure they were sturdy and could hold for the longest time possible. And I learned that rushing perfection leads to destruction. If you are trying to hurry up and get these cuts done, have everything done in time, you're going to cause more of a problem for yourself, because you're going to be making uneven cuts going fast. And if you just take your time to make the right cut the first time and get the supports level and straight within just 5 more minutes of time, instead of rushing it, you're going to keep yourself from failing multiple times over and over again. And in a long period of time, it's going to cause for a longer project. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Anyone have any questions?
What is the largest buck you shot?
I killed a 12-point with a score of 130, and I was probably 10 then, but here I killed a 10-point the year before last that scored a 120. Yes, ma'am.
Jacoby, how'd you get the base up on your supports?
I had to use a tractor, and I used the forks of the tractor to lift it up, and I set those supports, and I had some supports on the outside to hold those 2x4s that were set right next to each other together, and I set them on the inside of those supports, and with that tractor I set it on top and screwed that base into the supports.
But who helped you whenever you were learning?
Mostly my grandpa. He's taught me just about everything. He's taught me how to use all my tools and stuff like that, because my dad worked a lot. We would wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, way earlier than anywhere from 6 to now wants to be up. Especially now since I'm working, I'm like, come on, can't you just leave me in bed for a little bit longer?
Yeah.
But he taught me a lot of things, how to skin properly and where to aim so the animal does not die in pain, so they have a quick and easy death, and how to respect them not biting the heart. But when the first time we went out, we have a long period of Indian culture, so I did do the blood, and it was a sign of respect of giving off that animal.
Any other questions?
Eight minutes even?
Yeah.
thank you guys again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, yeah.
You guys are already here. The next number will be 47.
Kevin, do we keep the research papers?
Yeah.
You say it's cold? Yeah. Give Jasmine my hoodie.
Oh, wait, I'm sweating.
Really? Oh, there's lots of it. It's been blowing on me all night.
Yeah, you can. We've got 6 minutes. I'm not sure that all of it's true.
Emma,
Yeah.
was it good?
Yeah.
Good. Her project was cool.
How's your shoulder?
It's better. I got out of my brace last Friday, so it's been it's annoying. I could not do anything. Even writing in school, like, it was just a pain to have.
Yeah.
But I go back Monday. Yeah, I had my surgery that Friday, and I started Monday.
Yeah, that's why she doesn't her. So they don't wait around.
No, I'm actually going to gym.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's definitely an asset.
Yeah. She said that her shoulder has been giving her problems. Yeah. She told me all. I was like, that does not sound good. What?
What do you have to do with the camera?
Sit here and make sure it doesn't go off.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I have these like lovely little notes that says, please do not bump.
Yeah.
So if it bumps, then I just have to fix it.
Yes,
I got told that Miss Tyler is.
I think I heard
Oh, she's here.
Okay. I'm somebody's replacement, I don't know who.
I don't know, I only had 4 printed out.
1, 2, 3. Is she judging you?
They can like broadcast, because I just called them.
Solid? Okay.
I mean, we're down, coffee.
I'm fine. I just don't want to We have about 2 minutes.
I'll stand right here.
Yeah, over here works a lot better. Just start there and give you the number for this presentation.
I have it on my sheet.
You have it.
Thank you.
So are we waiting exactly for 6:20 to start?
Yeah, I think we're supposed to. We made budget for about 30 seconds. You have to be know if anybody's coming. One hour here. Okay. That gives us a start. Okay, everybody set? We've got our Roman ready. You are.
Yeah, my judges ready?
Yes.
In the age of technology, many tasks necessary for our survival are reduced to the point where physical activity is minimal. It is proven that physical inactivity is the primary risk factor for cardiovascular disease and mortality. My name is Roman Dashkevich, and my presentation to your project is the importance of exercise and diet for well-being. So my personal connection to this topic is I used to binge eat on snacks, stay up late, and I overall felt very bad, and I knew I shouldn't feel bad because I'm young. And I decided to change that by going to sleep earlier and just exercising and overall changing to a healthier and better diet. For my research, I researched the importance of exercise and diet. There are 4 main types of diet. Well, exercise, which is aerobic strength, flexibility, and balance. But
focused on the main two, which is aerobic and strength training. Different types of exercises have different benefits. Like strength training improves executive function and increases insulin growth factor 1 production, while aerobic exercise helps with verbal memory and helps the hippocampus from shrinking. It is proven that combining these exercises conveys a wider variety of benefits. William Bossers of the University of Groningen in Netherlands found that this statement to be true in his studies, which combined both aerobic exercise and strength training. It is proven that these exercises, mainly aerobic exercise, also strength training, are anti-aging. An evaluation of yogis who are 50 years old found that their brains resemble the health status of a 25-year-old. For diet, I wanted something that would be more general and everybody can implement, because some people, like the northern regions, they can't really get their hands on some plants or fruits and such, and how they recommend us to have four food groups and such. I wanted to just to use something that everybody could really implement. And I found that fasting is very beneficial to really anybody who eats. It helps clean out your gastrointestinal tract, get the excess food out of there, and it helps increase human growth hormone. Helps with brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps your brain from degenerating as you age. And there's different types of fasting. The most popular is intermittent fasting, but some people do prolonged fasting, which is a couple days on end, if not more. Intermittent fasting has many types. Some people have a fasting day and then eat the other day, or you can have eating windows, fast for 16 hours and eat for 8 hours, or you can just skip breakfast and dinner and just eat lunch, or do whatever really fits to your schedule. For my product, I ran the Heart of the Ozarks half marathon. I wanted something to do with health, and whatever I present or proposed wasn't exactly meeting the criteria, and a teacher suggested that I do a half marathon. It was actually this very same teacher, Miss Miller, and I decided to take her challenge and go ahead and do it, because I honestly had not really done much cardio, if any at all. And that was my time, 2 hours, 21 minutes. It was held on February 16th, 2019, which was a pretty cold day, but overall it was a very nice event. It started at the Ozarks Hills Shopping Center by JCPenney, and there was a first loop, which is a shorter part of the race, because there's different kinds of races. There was a 10K half marathon, some relays and such, but the second loop was a full 13 miles, and that's what I did. And I have got a medal for completing that race. I also have a hoodie, but I forgot it at home. So for practice, I exercised five days a week, every week from August up until December, because it got really cold and I couldn't exercise outside. I mainly did body weight exercises at home, outside, and I would run around the gravel roads and forest trails. A thing I researched about when I was researching cardio was barefoot running. When you run in shoes, your habitual foot striking pattern is a heel to toe, which causes a lot of shock, which stresses your tendons, ligaments, and muscles and bones, which is why many runners, their feet deteriorate and they have problems. And when you run barefoot, you have a different foot striking pattern, which is a forefoot, and that reduces the stress and impact in your legs, and that really helps you. There was a study done that people, they trained just barefoot and they implemented that forefoot striking pattern with shoes, and it really helped them out. And in fact, many track runners that I've heard about, they actually run barefoot for practice. And once it got really cold, since January up until the actual event, I would exercise every single day. And mainly it was just body weight exercises at home and weightlifting in the gym. And the old gym for body conditioning. We would do cardio. He would make us run laps, and I would run laps nonstop for practice. But up until that, I really didn't practice cardio because it was really cold outside and I didn't really want to go out. For my conclusion, physical inactivity is a primary risk factor for cardiovascular disease and mortality. And to help my body and my health, I decided to implement a good diet and exercise. And because of that, I've been feeling better than ever. And it just really helps combat disease, anti-aging, and a plethora of other benefits. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
What motivated you to make this big lifestyle change?
Well, as I stated at the very beginning of the personal connection, I used to stay up late and just eat all kinds of food, and I just really felt bad, and I knew I was not supposed to feel bad because I'm young. Like,
So it just was like an aha moment one day?
Yeah.
That's cool. What did you include in your diet?
Well, I typically don't eat until I get home, and that's about a 3-hour eating period. That's what I typically do. But right now, I'm trying to keep my diet mostly plant-based.
Do you plan to do another half marathon?
People ask me if I plan on even doing a marathon, but maybe, but as of right now, I'm not really sure.
Still training every day? Or exercising every
Yeah.
day?
Actually, I woke up early during the race, and since it was in a habit of exercising every day, I actually exercised right before the race because I had nothing else to do. So by the time I was like finishing up the race, my legs were dead.
How did you increase your increments from the time you started running to?
Well, at first I did like a little lap. There's like around the roads, and then we have forests everywhere, and some forests have trails in them. And I would just do a couple rounds, and then I would go through the other trails, and then like we have many trails around our place, and I just keep on going different trails and going longer. And the longest I went around our place, it was 7 miles, and that was barefoot, but it was warm. I was thinking about doing the actual marathon, half marathon barefoot, but it was really cold. Your feet would get numb and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But getting used to running barefoot, it takes a while, and I actually injured myself many times.
Can you run on pavement there?
Yeah, that's easy. That's not gravel. But that's the tricky part.
Any more questions? All right, thank you.
Are you gonna take this?
Well, you don't have to touch it. It's only if you like move over and then you yes. So you don't do anything to it.
It's just if the person is like standing somewhere, you just have to move the camera to face them, and then you don't have to touch it at all. I will be back.
The next one will be session number 75. Presentation number 75.
Thank you.
I got your takeaway.
Your You got this one going.
In the front. That one that works.
Is this your personal design or you already know?
Yeah.
You know all the procedure. And this one's number 75.
Thank you. That's what I
And
need.
then you have any judges for this one? Do you need more judges?
We've got 4. We've got. Yeah, you're not down for this one.
Yeah, I'm on this one as well. Hi, how are you? I'm well, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah.
I psyched myself out. Like at first I was like, you know what, I can do this, it'll be fun, but then it starts psyching myself out, but it really wasn't bad. I've had so many piercings and needles down through, I'm like, I know it'll be fine, but my sister talked through it, and I'm like, that's and then now Raven has a bunch on her arm, and she talked through all of them, I'm like,
I wanted to know where she's the one that I got this one from my brother. It is. I didn't know. Every time you get there.
mine's on my hip, and then Raven has labor here, light bulb right there. I think the black-eyed Susan and the lavender plant right there. A constellation of Ovarian. She got matched with my dad. My dad got here. She got here. And then my cousin died. And she died, we found the word, it's going to be okay for Edmund, right? My dad has 3. My mom wants to give her 2.
Everybody finished it?
Yeah.
Are you cheating?
Yes, I would say. Is it gonna cover? Let me see.
We'll just tilt it a little bit sideways. Green schedule.
Right. Is the clicker okay?
We're not supposed to start at 6:46. You don't need to take this, it's gonna shoot it right
Good work, man.
10 minutes time. No. Anyone need objections to starting in early?
Huh?
I said you object to starting a minute early.
Oh, we can. Just remember.
Judges ready? We got our numbers and everything ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all yours.
Are my judges ready?
Yes.
So I have a friend, and let's say her name's Sally. She has been bouncing home from home because she cannot build a stable relationship with the family she's put with. Sally's in foster care. Sally is suffering from reactive attachment disorder. Good evening. My name is Caitlin, and for my senior project, I held a parents' night out. This parents' night out not only benefited me, but the parents and children as well. The children were able to bond with others and do fun activities, and the parents were going to have a night to themselves. You're my kid. Sometimes you need a break from your kids. Reactive attachment disorder is caused when a child is not bonded with by the appropriate caregiver. Reactive attachment disorder can cause behavior issues, not only as a young child, but as an adult as well. It can make a child irritable, scared, and sometimes unhappy. It also affects the way a child bonds with others. And then you're likely going to see reactive attachment disorder in children who are in foster care, orphans, not bonded with, abused, or neglected. Like I said at the beginning, for my senior project, I held a parents' night out. This parents' night out was held at Pomona Christian Church, and it's a church that I attend. I felt like it was a safe environment. If you're going to drop your kids off somewhere, I felt like a church was a better place to do that. For my theme for my senior project, it was Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. So any activities that we did, or the book that we read, or the snacks we had involved green eggs and ham. I offered this event to children who were in first grade and under, and the children who were at my church. I had 32 kids sign up, but only 18 showed up, and that was plenty enough. This was also open to children who were 8 and under, because I sent letters home for children who could sign up. And if there was younger ages, then they could sign up as well, because I had a nursery available.
I had 9 helpers at the beginning and ended out with 5. And there was the nursery. I had 2 3-year-olds and 1 2-year-old. And then I had a helper in there watching them. And then, of course, I had to have a schedule, and I had everything timed out. And we followed the schedule for the most part, but we had a few issues, but it wasn't a big deal. So that's the schedule and the things that we did. We read the Green Eggs and Ham book several times because the kids really enjoyed that. So probably about 4 times. And the kids were allowed to color if they wanted to. And for the coloring sheets, I had Dr. Seuss theme and insects and animals because I felt like that was a good coloring sheet for the kids to color. And by the end of the night, they got to take their coloring sheets home. Now, you can't hold an event without snacks. Kids love snacks, I love snacks, everyone loves snacks. So one of the things we had was juice. It was green and yellow to stand for Green Eggs and Ham. We had Wells and animal crackers because kids just love those. And we had pizza. But my favorite part about the snacks, and the kids loved it too, was the cookies and cupcakes. They looked like Green Eggs and Ham. And when I went to go give them a cupcake or a cookie, they were like, hey, I would like a ham or an egg. So it was kind of fun to, hand out the food like that. And then after we ate, we played some bingo. We played several rounds, and everyone wins. So everyone got to really enjoy that. And I actually had other activities going on while some were playing bingo. So some of them could just do bingo on their own, and there's 3 little girls playing. And they got to pick out their prizes if they won. And there's some kids picking out some prizes. And then after that, we got to do some painting. I had 2 of my helpers paint hands, and we eventually made thing 1 and thing 2 that looked like that. By the end of the night, they were allowed to draw faces on their thing 1 or thing 2 and write down what number they wanted. The last thing we did was we played with Play-Doh. We played with Play-Doh for about 30 minutes because the kids just love Play-Doh. The Play-Doh was green to represent Green Eggs and Ham. By the end of the night, they got to take home their coloring sheets, their painting, their Play-Doh because I had little bags for them to take that home. And then while we were waiting for their parents, they got little goodie bags that had a little rubber ducky and a bunch of candy in it. I felt like the kids were really hyped up though because I gave them however many cookies they wanted, snacks they wanted. So I feel like that was their favorite part about that. I had a few challenges, and one of the challenges was the video for Green Eggs and Ham. I planned on playing that for them, but I could not figure out the setup, not really good with technology. I felt like I didn't have enough helpers because if I had like centers or something, I need some kids or some helpers to watch other kids. And then I ran out of activities. I felt like the kids went through the activities really quick, and I actually learned that kids tend to do that. You think that it'll take longer for them to do a certain thing, but really it doesn't. And then I had one kid show up an hour early while I was still setting up. So I had to keep this little girl entertained while still decorating because I only had an hour and 30 minutes to set up everything. The parents were very thankful for me holding this event. They said, thanks for letting me have this night with just my husband. And they also said how they enjoyed just having a quiet home because some of them just went back to the house and just settled down. My senior project really helped me realize what I wanted to do in the future. I plan on having a daycare of my own, and I wasn't for sure if that's what I wanted to do until I started working with these kids, and I think that's what I want to do. And then the parents were able to have a night to themselves, and sometimes, you need a break from your kids. And the kids were able to bond with other children, as well as me and my helpers, and got to do fun activities as well. Thank you for your time. Do my judges have any questions?
Will you continue to have this event in the future?
I may. Okay, so like I said, I would like to have a daycare of my own. And I feel like I will have events with my daycare, like maybe have like a parents' night out, or even around Christmas time do like a Polar Express theme thing, like just events and stuff. If I have my daycare.
Caitlin, have you observed or worked at any of the local daycares?
No, actually, I plan on doing that after I get out of high school because at the moment I'm working at Route 21. And I already have enough stuff going on, so I was waiting till I get out of high school so I have an open schedule.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
I think so. What time does your presentation start? 7? We got a little bit of time. I think
You got it? You need any help?
you got the time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You said you're gonna come that road. I'm gonna get over that.
Yeah, that's good enough.
We'll make it smaller so you can carry it.
Thank you.
This is for Brendan. He'll be a judge next.
I'll feel guilty to have some different practice. That is. Coach telling me Caitlin's doing time.
Is it 7 o'clock our next one? Yeah. It'll take a while. I see. Is here. Brandon is still here. And he's here. And Brendan.
He's not here yet.
He's not here. Is that Megan's?
Is it Wilson?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I know who it is.
Okay, here.
Pharmacist at
Yeah.
Walgreens.
Yeah.
I can stop her. Ask her. I don't know. If she doesn't make it, I'll just keep time and do this because that's all we make.
What, you're moving on? Yes.
Julie, did, I got an email back from she said she was I gotta go past these. I know, that is pretty cool. And yet Jamie. Showed me the documentation down there. Now, I did that 2 years ago, so the letters are on. Did you see the this started like, oh my God. I found the ditch probably somewhere. So I found it laying around in an old shed. No. I've got a livery basket just like yours. Well, yeah, I hope it's not mine, but I got rid of it. I haven't seen one lately, so. I found a big market, but they're one time it set on the side and then they had the camping steps. And that's what I want to do.
I'm not gonna run home and bring you a charger. Oh, I have a thing. I'm gonna watch Jacob's is at 7. We just started now. And exactly at 7. Lisa and I got here at 5:15. I said, "Do you need a charger?" And you said, "No, it'll be fine."
You have the front.
She has a time.
I can keep it time.
That's okay. I'm not 20% right now, so.
I'm here online.
I'm already
In this room.
Me too.
So if I need to.
I can keep her here more. Are you gonna go up and
He is not here yet, but he has 5 minutes.
I'm gonna order this year, like I was last year. I had to be.
Oh, see, I've already slipped up. Went to lunch and forgot. This is ID number 60. ID number 60. If you guys would like to sit in the empty chairs, you're welcome to. Karen, judges, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Anytime you're ready, judges.
Okay. Are my judges ready?
Yes.
When I was about 5, I asked my dad if I could use a chainsaw. He happily agreed and put me between his arms while he held the chainsaw and I got to work the throttle. Good evening. My name is Jacob Wiles, and I did my senior project on the logging industry. In the logging industry, there are 2 main types of logging: selective logging and clear cutting. Selective logging, all in all, is better for the environment. It has companies go out and choose certain trees to see if they are mature enough to cut down. If they are, they'll mark them, and logging companies will go out and cut those certain trees down. And in doing this, this allows the water that mature tree was using to go to all the surrounding vegetation. The other type of logging is clear cutting. Clear cutting, as you can tell, is not as good for the environment, but there are a couple of benefits to clear cutting. One of those benefits is to prevent disease in the trees. If there's a certain disease in the tree or in a certain area, a company will go in and clear that whole area to prevent any further spreading of that disease. Another plus to clear cutting is to clear invasive species, such as the oak borer beetle. This beetle bores through oak trees and eventually starves them for water and kills them. And clear cutting all those trees will prevent that beetle from killing any of the trees in surrounding areas. Logging companies have major economical effects in local economies. When a company moves into a certain area and stays, that company can make about 30% of the local economy. Along with just cutting down the trees, the logging residue, such as the stumps, branches, and leaves, can be mulched up and used in biofuels like rocket fuel. Efficiency and productivity is important in logging. The more trees you cut down, the more money you make. And to cut more trees down, you have to have people. And the more people you have, the more efficient it is. And the logging industry makes about 275,000 jobs in the world. The Canadian boreal forest alone makes 165,000 of those jobs. in the logging industry, there are certain laws that companies have to follow to keep from illegally logging woods. If a company goes in and illegally logs a woodland area and sells that to a store, then a consumer gets a hold of it. That can be a hefty fine for the consumer along with the company if they are fined. The laws also keep the forest healthier by allowing companies to come in during a certain area during a certain time and only cutting a certain amount of wood in that area. My favorite part, I like history, and my favorite part is the history of logging. Logging goes way back, especially in the Ozarks. The Ozarks was founded on logging because the terrain here was rocky, and it was one of the last places to be found because the terrain was so rocky. Around here, the majority of the trees are hardwoods, and hardwoods are good for making railroad ties. And so railroad ties were made here and shipped out west to allow railroads to expand out west and more people to move out there. When the logging industry came into the Ozarks, boomtowns started to pop up. These boomtowns still exist today, such as Winona, Birch Tree, and the biggest mill in Missouri, Grandin. These mills don't exist anymore, but that's how those towns were founded. Logging mills originally were along the Gasconade River or close to it. The loggers would log in the northern forest and float it down to the southern mills. And they would, during the summer, the Gasconade River would be full of logs and men walking across them or controlling them with rafts. For my product, I built a chainsaw. It is one of the most used tools in the logging industry and one of the most simple besides the handsaw. It is very crucial to all loggers. My mother did not want me to build my product on the kitchen table. But as you can see, I did it anyways. And I took my sweet time. The challenges I faced was, it was hard to find time with my mentor. He's very busy. He owns his own logging mill, or a sawmill, and his own logging business. Along with that, he has his own farm and family. Another challenge was it was hard to find missing parts and tools. It was hard to dig through the pile of parts that they shipped to me to find the tiny nuts and bolts that were required to build this chainsaw. Along with that, I had to go get a special wrench to get into those little holes in the head to tighten down the head. And the last challenge was breaking parts. The first night I got to start up my chainsaw, I was super excited. But that all came to a screeching halt when a little key between this flywheel right here and the crankshaft broke and completely killed the saw. I thought something bad went wrong on the inside of the engine and I was going to start all over. But come to find out, it was just a $2 part. I've been using a chainsaw since I can remember. And when senior projects came around, I wanted to research something that I knew I could really get into. And since I've been using a chainsaw, I wanted to research the logging industry. I thought I knew everything about the logging industry, but come to find out, I knew absolutely nothing. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
You plan on going into the logging industry?
No. My mentor, I got to work in his sawmill for a little while, just for like a couple hours, and I realized, yeah, I definitely don't want to work there.
What can you tell us about your chainsaw?
It's an MS 360. They don't make the MS series anymore, so you have to build them. And it was just a box of parts from where I ordered it. Farmer Tech is where I ordered it from, and came with no instructions, and had to assemble it. YouTube became a very good resource to where I could figure out how to put stuff together. And it's got a 20-inch bar on it. And my dad decided to put a 9-tooth sprocket on it so it'll cut even faster. And it's got so much power to handle that. It's got plenty.
So you cut a bunch of wood with it?
I didn't want to cut too much with it because I didn't want to tear it up for tonight. But after tonight, it's going to get used.
Those boar beetles you're talking about on the invasive pests, whenever you cut that down, are they not leaving? Go find good timber, or do they die? Or
You got to cut. You'd have to cut a larger area than what they're in. And then they would probably eventually die out or get more controlled. Any others? All right, thank you.
You guys ready for the next one? Oh, I didn't want to forget that part. Yes, this one is ID number 36. I'm already sucking up on the job.
I'll keep you on this.
Well, I didn't do this, but this is a good thing to help you guys find it. I've got them on my screen already, so I just have to click on their name. I don't have to find them. It does make life easier for you guys.
You should include it on this.
You know what, I bet when they made those, they didn't have those numbers assigned.
yeah, mine's on my schedule. You ever looked at the schedule?
Now I have my schedule.
You didn't do it either.
You're so judgmental. So I have to throw money in.
Oh, well. I just have 3 more. This is clicking right along. But thank you guys for taking your time and judging for us. We greatly appreciate that. So, thank you. I have 740. I have 4. I used to have 8 or 10. I don't know.
About all this stuff started.
Just stay there. They don't have to skip up the judge, so that can mess up.
I don't want to. I want to mess something in.
Yeah. Don't cause confusion.
You have to. But also, you're at the law.
Yeah, I know.
Are you watching that? Is it okay to, I should ask the sooner, if they're standing up here, does that make them up over here? Okay. I think somebody would mention that like long ago, but standing in front is awkward as opposed to standing on the side. When it's behind you, that's not a good idea. So far. Brandon Marquette. Did you get a chance to go out to eat? That wasn't too bad. I noticed that habit came back when I went to grab something to eat. We're all sitting just eating quickly. Even with the emergencies. I got a whole Never mind, be cool.
What? You want? You want?
Is everybody on session 36? Well, wait, we're still missing the judge. He's got an appointment.
Somebody else should wait on it.
The judges are all here.
Are my judges ready? Good evening, I'm Bred Marshall, and I'm going to be talking to you about the game of golf. I started playing golf when I was just 3 years old. My grandpa bought me my first set of golf clubs, and they were just little bitty Snoopy clubs. It had 3 clubs, a driver, like a 9-iron, and a putter. And that's really when it all began. When I was 5 years old, played in my first golf tournament at West Plains with my grandfather. And after that, it just took off from there because he started putting me in competitions all over Missouri, and really anywhere he could find a competition to put me in, he was putting me in it. As he said, I just had the talent and I was good enough to go, so he was making me go, whether I wanted to or not. Talk to you a little bit about the history of golf. Golf began in the mid-15th century in Scotland, and well, as you could assume, it was just starting up, so it was not very popular, and surprisingly, quite a few people actually played golf back then, but the technology wasn't very good, so it's a whole different game than it is now. In the 19th century, a lot of advances started becoming in golf, and more people started playing. The clubs started getting a little bit better, and golf really kind of started taking off and establishing itself in what seemed like all parts of the world at the time. Scotland was the biggest golf country in the world. They just had golf courses left and right everywhere, and surprisingly enough, they back then never did start manufacturing clubs. They just had the courses, and they never manufactured clubs. So it was kind of odd. Clubs were manufactured in the US and the UK and shipped all over the world. And when they started manufacturing them in the US is when the courses started coming around and people in the United States started picking up golf and started playing golf. And it all started expanding in the United States at that point. The British Empire, they had golf, but they ended up banning it because it was interacting with archery practice, and they said they weren't getting enough time, and it was making their national defenses weak. So they put a ban on golf, and a lot of the people in that empire was, very upset about it, so they came up with their own game. It was called golf. It's the same thing, just with a K. And it was more like croquet instead of actual golf. But it still was almost the same concept. And at this time, there was more than 12 courses in the United States alone. It's not counting everywhere else. The golf had already been established and started really taking off. So 12 courses was really a big accomplishment and big for the game. Amateurs are the lowest level on the professional league that you can be. And with it just starting out when it did, a lot of the older guys that had been playing for a while, when all the big competitions started coming around, the amateurs they all took over because they were young. They could hit it further even with less technically advanced clubs. And they were just a whole lot better because they were younger and could do more stuff. The Grand Slam is when a player on the tour wins the US Open, US Amateur, the British Open, and the British Amateur all in the same year. And Scotland and England in 1902 had their first match against each other. And that's really when the big competitions came along. Walter Travis was from Scotland. He was one of the best golfers back then. It was said that nobody could beat him. People in America heard about this and sent someone over to play against him. And it was a 3-day match. And on the third day, Travis was found in his hotel room, and he had suffered a massive heart attack and did not get to finish the third day. So no one really knows if he could have been beat or if he couldn't have been beat. Tiger Woods was 14 in 1990, and that's when he made his first appearance on the tour. And in 1996 is when he really exploded and started getting good, started winning everything, started competing with just all the big golfers and becoming a real well-known golfer and doing really good. And he also brought a lot of television coverage because when people heard about how young he was, how good he was, they just started going there with cameras and filming every move he made. And sure enough, it brought more young people to the game. It also helped golf become known in all parts of the country because he was just a phenom, and they started showing him everywhere. And so it really helped out the game of golf and really made it more widespread. To improve your game in golf, Justin Thomas says that every iron shot you hit on the range, you should try to achieve something different. And this is very true because if you just go out on the range and you just sit there and hit the same shot over and over again, yeah, you're going to be good at that shot, but who's to say that you're going to need that shot every time you hit the ball? So it made a lot of sense. And most people just go there just to hit and get loose and kind of warm up and get their muscles stretched out. But really, that's not what the range is for. That's not what it's intended for. The range is intended for people to go there and just, work on their ball striking, forming their shots, making the ball do what they want it to do, making it go where they want it to go. And most people just look right over that and don't see that. So they just go there and just hit the balls and call it good. Ron Kaprasky said that there's part of your game that you might not give much thought to, but if you did, I really believe you started shooting lower scores. And that part of the game is your short game. Your short game is considered from anywhere from 100 yards until you're in the hole with your score. And I don't know if any of you have ever played golf before, but your short game is the most important part. That's where you score at. Your drives are important and your second shots are important, but once you get inside 100 yards, that's where you can really make something happen. Because if you get really good at those shots, then you're just going to stick it close every time. And you're just going to have, short putts, which are easy to make, and it's just going to make your life a world of difference. And it's going to make it a whole lot easier. So your short game is very important. How to practice, like I said, on the range. Don't hit the same shots. Just don't go out there just to hit. Actually work on your ball striking. Actually work on making the ball do what you want it to do. And the putting and chipping green, that's important too, because that helps your short game. So, and always change it up. Don't ever, it kind of goes back. You don't ever just keep hitting the same shot, but make sure you always change it up. Don't always use the same club every time you go to the range, all the stuff like that. Don't always use the same club when you're chipping, stuff like that. For my product, I hosted a golf tournament. Actually hosted it at the North Terra Golf Course in West Plains. It's out PV Highway. And really, I just did it because it'd been a long winter. It was kind of cold. And I just wanted to see people get out and enjoy the outdoors. And, golf is not, I don't want everyone to think it's about the competition and winning money. I want them to actually go out there to play just to have fun and not just go out there, man, I need to go out here. This looks like an easy tournament. I want to win the money. So that's not what I wanted to see happen at this tournament. So I made that clear when I gave my speech at the first of it. And really, even though it was cold and it was kind of nasty, I really think that everyone there enjoyed it and just, wasn't worried about the money. They just played just to have fun. The money I raised $806 to donate to the athletic department here at Willow Springs. The challenges I faced was finding sponsors. I had my golf tournament on March 2nd of 2019, and it was, right after the first of the year, and it was just really hard to find sponsors because of big businesses. They weren't really looking to sponsor anything because they got other things that they always sponsor every year, which comes later in the year, and they're usually big sponsors for that. So they didn't really want to put forth the money and risk not having the money to sponsor their other big ones. So that was a challenge. From finding people to play, it was kind of cold. It wasn't too sunny, and there was a little breeze. It wasn't too bad, but with how cold it was and the breeze, it just made it pretty miserable, really, unless you had a heater in your golf cart. So, but we also had heaters there, so we supplied people with heaters to make it a little bit better. And the weather, like I said, the weather was just nasty, just a little bit miserable. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
I want to ask one question, if I can. It's a point of clarification, really. In your document here, it says, Watson earned $1.62 billion. Mm-hmm. That's million, right? It should be million, 1.62 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably. Yeah.
It seemed like a lot.
If it was talking about one tournament, then yeah. But if it's talking about like his whole life, that's probably supposed to be billion.
Master's tournament, so I assume.
Yeah. Then it was supposed to be billion. It's just a typo. That's fine.
Are you on the golf team here at school?
Yes, sir. I am. We actually just had conference, and we did pretty good there. We go to districts next Tuesday.
Good luck.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you.
This one is item number 9.
On the top of it, on the right.
Every time.
I think.
Yeah. For a long time.
That's how. It's credit.
So much that works in there. I haven't either.
No, no, that's Appreciate it. I'm well, how are you?
I'm just holding it.
Is that the ultra quick version?
Yeah, thanks. All right, are my judges ready?
Yes.
Okay. If you can imagine with me for a moment a scene of utter devastation, men, women, some lying face down on their sides, blood pooling around them, unconscious, and others writhing in pain, crying out for help, all the victims of a mass shooting. And as you walk through this nightmare, the individual closest to you is calling out, telling you they've been shot in the leg. Now you have a choice to make here. You can either stay and help this individual as best you can, or you can continue to move on and let them know that professional medical attention will arrive soon. And unfortunately, without the prior knowledge and proper training needed in order to assist this person, they will most likely die before proper medical attention can arrive. Good evening, my name is Alex McNew, and I feel that school security is a very prevalent issue that needs immediate, addressing. Now, for my research, I researched how firearms were used as a form of school security in the past, as well as some of the benefits that come with using firearms. Now, I researched mainly legislation and in some cases where schools actually did use firearms as a form of school security. And a very interesting case I found close to home was in Fairview, Missouri, West Plains, Missouri, that is, Fairview Elementary School. Now, Fairview Elementary School does have armed staff members, and they train them through a private security firm known as Shield Solutions. The staff members that do choose to be armed undergo an initial 40-hour course, and every following year have to take a 36-hour course again in order to remain certified. Now, I went ahead and researched a little further into Missouri's legislation and why certain schools can do this. So about 20 undisclosed school districts, including Fairview and Houston High School, use Shield Solutions in order to arm their staff members. And I found this very interesting because in 2014, Missouri actually passed legislation that allowed for schools to arm their staff members by sending them to a certified law enforcement academy. And in turn, after completing their training, they would be considered a school protection officer. Now, the way schools found to circumvent this, because this is a more costly and very time non-efficient, if you will, method, they used private security firms, which are allowed, like Shield Solutions, and undergoing that very quick and simple procedure, they can simply amend their school rules in order to allow teachers to carry concealed firearms. Now, for my research, as well as the firearms, I also researched additional methods of school security, because granted, legislation takes time to be passed, and it can be a very lengthy process. So I researched how student preparedness, as well as building infrastructure, influences the effectiveness of school security, and how secure schools can be with updated building infrastructure, as well as student and staff involvement in preparation for any kind of emergency event. Now, threats for school shootings and other emergency situations, if there was a fire, if there is some sort of mass scale injury that's happening throughout the school, these threats have become much more prevalent, and school buildings were built originally for learning. They're not necessarily built with security in mind. And so once these threats have become more prevalent, and now they are, we have to take this matter much more seriously. Infrastructure needs to be updated so that way we can establish better checkpoints, we can understand where people are and who they are. And with student preparedness and staff preparedness, it allows for them to react and respond in a much better manner to these emergency situations. So for my product, I spoke with our school resource officer and my mentor, Officer Glenn Moore, and he discussed with me how he wanted to implement some additional training that would allow for students and staff members to become more involved in securing our schools. And this actually led to my product because he was looking for a very time and cost efficient way to include students and staff members in school security without actually pushing too much responsibility on them. So for my product, I decided to do what is known as the BATH assessment, and I taught a class on it. It is a form of medical training that's been adapted for military use. Excuse me. It's been adapted for military use and is used mainly by police and SWAT force members now. And it is very specific to school environments and the situations that would result from a mass shooting. And so for the order of the acronym, and I'll get to that in just a moment, it's very important because it actually details the steps on how you perform this assessment. Now, I included this presentation slide from a separate presentation I actually used to teach this assessment with Officer Moore. Now, as you can see, the first letter of each point is red, and that's where the acronym comes from, BATH. The B stands for bleeding, which is the most severe threat whenever it comes to an injury or firearm wound. You will die the fastest from bleeding. And so in order to address bleeding, you use tourniquets and wound packing, which we taught the students how to use whenever we actually taught this class. And if you look in front of my trifold there, I have numerous pieces of medical equipment that are actually in each classroom now. The staff members are able to use in the event of an emergency situation like this. There's a tourniquet in front, and you can't see it, but there is a smaller, much different type of tourniquet and a bag next to it, as well as the gauze for wound packing, trauma shears, and then some other medical equipment that we use to do the training. Now, the A in BATH stands for airway, and this is pretty obvious. People need to breathe to live, so we use what's called a head tilt jaw thrust. And in order to do this, you place your thumbs underneath their chin, and as you lift up, it forces their tongue straight down to the bottom of their mouth. It opens their airway, allows for them to breathe, and you can see if they're having difficulty breathing. And this particular part of the assessment leads into the T, which is tension pneumothorax. And this is whenever an individual has suffered some form of chest wound, there is an open hole, they're unable to breathe, and they have something like a ruptured or punctured wound. And because they can't breathe and air can't be maintained in the chest cavity, you have to use what's called an occlusive dressing, which is any material that you can use to lay over that open wound and seal it. And once the wound is sealed, air begins to build in the chest cavity, which causes pressure and prevents them from breathing properly. Now, in order to prevent that, you have to what's called burp the dressing, and you have to lift the dressing off, allowing the air to be released, and then reseal it in order for them to breathe properly. Now, the H, which confuses some people, it stands for hypothermia. Now, you wouldn't figure in a classroom setting like this that hypothermia would be much of an issue. It's fairly warm. A lot of you are wearing short sleeve t-shirts. It's not cold in here. But once you start bleeding, especially if an individual has lost a lot of blood, their body temperature drops very rapidly. And if your body temperature drops like that due to blood loss, it prevents blood clotting, which you need in order to use these other parts of the assessment, as well as some of the medical equipment that we use. Because once the blood stops clotting, you'll start bleeding again, which in turn will prevent anyone from being able to help you until you're warmed back up. And by that time, it will probably be too late. Now, I included this slide just to kind of give you an idea of which types of medical equipment that we use, which I have laid out there. We do use tourniquets and gauze, mainly for bleeding. And the tourniquets are used on any kind of limb wound. We call it an appendage wound. So anything on your arms or in your lower legs, you would typically use a tourniquet for, especially if there's bleeding. Wound packing with the gauze occurs in any kind of junctional area. So your hips, shoulders, and neck would require wound packing because you can't actually apply pressure there with a tourniquet or other means. The occlusive dressing, like I explained, that is for the tension pneumothorax. If you have a gaping chest wound, that's what you would need to use. Now, for my actual product, my tangible product, I conducted a training with a number of students, and I actually taught them how to perform this bath assessment with Officer Moore's help, of course, and by the use of a PowerPoint. I taught them what the order of lethality means, how to enact the bath assessment, and how to properly address a situation. Now, after I taught them all of this, I played the part of the injured individual. So I ended up laying in the floor, it's kind of cold, and they in turn would approach me and try to address the situation. And as they proceeded through this assessment, checking for wounds, making sure I was breathing properly, Officer Moore would call out injuries or wounds that they should have noticed, and in turn they would have to react to those. So, like I said, I played the part of the injured, and at one point, Jacob Wiles was actually in the back of the classroom. He had to address a situation where I had received a gunshot wound to the leg, as well as multiple shots to the arm and an open chest wound. So he had to apply 2 tourniquets to my leg, which is extremely uncomfortable if any of you have ever had to wear tourniquets. It's horrible. As well as one to my arm, and then he had to hold that occlusive dressing under my chest. I think he had a little too much fun with it because those tourniquets were really, really tight. So we also stressed to the students that we taught that this is a very time-efficient procedure. A full bath assessment with no injuries found and the individual is fine typically should only take about 60 seconds. And the method for using the bath assessment is you put your hands together and form a nice hard curve here, and you have to run it along their legs on the inside and outside, as well as the back of their legs, and that proceeds to the rest of the body. You go from legs to the neck and arms, and then you check their chest, and that's when it's all said and done. And it does take some time, especially if wounds are found, and you'll end up having to commit to that individual alone, even if there are other individuals that are injured. So we stressed to them that it was really important they do this as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and I think they did a really good job after understanding how this procedure actually works. Now, that was a challenge for them because they had just learned it that day. And for me, I faced multiple challenges over the course of time that we did the senior project, and not just for the product itself. I think my biggest challenge that I faced was time management. I struggled greatly with this because I do a lot of extracurricular activities as well as I work and, homework and all the basic stuff that kids do. So it was very difficult for us to find time to work on this repeatedly. And then, of course, Officer Moore, being our school resource officer and a father, also made it difficult for him to actually get together with me and find time to work on this. I was able to attend a few trainings with him. I actually got to attend a SWAT training, which was really interesting, where we actually covered this. And then we also taught the staff members how to do this particular type of training, and I was able to attend that as well. Both times I was the dummy. Don't laugh too hard. Planning ahead was also very difficult for me. As we started getting closer and closer to actually doing my product, Officer Moore's son ended up sick whenever we had planned to do it throughout a week, and then he also contracted the same sickness that his son had. So we had to reschedule right at the last minute, but it turned out all right. Now, something that I didn't mention earlier with my product was the delivery method we used to teach this bath assessment. And that was very difficult because the amount of information that you present to these kids and to these staff members, it's amazing how much information they actually have to take in. There's so much information. And so I had to condense that. I had to find an effective way to teach them what they needed to know, and then anything extra had to come after once they understood the basis of what they were doing. And so thankfully, after having taught all of this and with the students being so cooperative and working with me, I'm very thankful to say that this particular form of training is extremely effective. It's very time and cost efficient, and I think that it will serve very well in the future if there ever was an emergency situation like I mentioned earlier. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
Do you have an occlusive dressing in this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I can show you that. So, as I said, this is what all the staff members have now, with the exception of this. I don't think they carry. Most do. Okay, well then most of these carry. This is what's called an Laius bandage. And you can see this is what it looks like whenever it's actually in the package. It's sealed. Now, what this does, it acts as a loose bandage, which you would use for any kind of head or chest injury. It has an eye cup. So on the interior, there's a flap, and here we have this occlusive dressing. And I find this really interesting. this reminds me of something as simple as like cookie cutter sheets that you would lay down on a pan. Something as simple as this could literally save someone's life. And all you have to do is once you clean the wounded area, you lay it over that wounded area and apply pressure, and it seals, which prevents that air from escaping. And then in turn, once the wound needs to be burped, you would release it, allow the airflow to come out, cover it again. We have those. And then on the interior of this, it also has gauze that you could use for wound packing as well. I actually have one of these at home, and I think it's really, really effective. Thankfully, I haven't had to use it yet, but yes, we do have occlusive dressings as well as the rest of the gauze. And then multiple types of tourniquets, and I'm actually going to go ahead and show you this anyways. Now, this particular type of tourniquet is called a cat type tourniquet, I believe, and it uses a windlass rod as well as Velcro in order to tighten and constrict blood flow. Now, the way this works is, and I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to put it on because it kind of hurts. You undo the Velcro to the length where you can fit it on your limb, and then once you fit it on, you tighten it as tight as you can by pulling, and as you wrap the Velcro around, you take this windlass rod and you turn it, and there's an elastic band inside of it that tightens even more so. And once you've tightened it a number of turns, I'm not going to tighten very many because it's not on my leg, you can undo this Velcro, and there is a hook here that goes on both sides, depending on which way you turned it originally, that you hook in, and then you hook this over. And the timestamp just helps you to understand when you actually applied the tourniquet. It makes it very effective to know how long it's actually been on there. And so you don't have to worry about it being on too long and causing any sort of complications later. And then the other type of tourniquet that we have is much more simple. It's very similar to an elastic band, and it has two hooks on the end. And essentially all you do with this is once you loop it around your arm, you thread one end through the other hook. And as you tighten, you take it back around and hook it through the hook again. And then it does the same as this particular type of tourniquet. Not quite as efficient, but it still works very well. So, good question. Any other questions?
So you hosted one that you actually taught for the students, is that
yes.
correct?
Yes,
So did you have a good turnout? I mean,
I didn't have a lot of people turn out for that, and that was partly myself. I did not advertise well, and that came along with that planning ahead. As we were trying to put this together, because we had to reschedule at the last minute, I completely forgot to advertise in the bulletin and actually put it out there more so. It was mostly just word of mouth from me. So I only had about 7 or 8 people show up. But out of all the people that showed up, that's not a bad number considering how difficult it is to actually teach this to a large group of people. Whenever we taught the staff members for here at Willow, we had to separate them into groups. And granted, they were fairly large because there were a lot of staff members here. It was very simple once we broke them down and made them to where they could be individual partners, and we weren't addressing an entire auditorium. It was just right in front of the stage or wherever we would need to teach them. So, any other questions? All right, thank you guys.
Yeah.
12:52.
Thank you. All right. Could be the last one.
I'm gonna need your phone again. I know.
I know. Okay. I was gonna say I read that, and then by the time I got over here, I forgot who it was.
I was supposed to hand it to. No, ask her his mom. She looks like her dad. That was his mom. I think it is.
Do you have a tripod?
I think those are gonna do. I'm just a something
And right here, the man himself. Oh, okay, I was looking at the wrong direction.
Take your time.
This is the last one. I guess behind this was an 8. Same.
Down.
Do it, Rudy. I want to watch. I tried to Is that what you're saying?
Is that what you're inspiring?
It's a small one. Because I went up there. I started down here. Ransacked the nation.
Mr. Hope is running a volunteer.
I know, my mom is a, well, I didn't get here, I was gonna take it this morning, I swear, and then I didn't. So you're. Yes. So I'm taking it from home.
No, he answers out at 10:03. What?
Deliveries or anything else coming that you want?
Yeah. Awesome. I didn't know he was going to go out, or I would have found him and cut one. I don't know if that's what that's for. I decided to.
Okay, Larry. Wherever you are. Got it.
War. War never changes, but the technology used in it does. Hello, my name is Xavier Reines, and I believe war is one of the major downfalls of society. Unfortunately, it is mandatory for the technological development of society. Because of this, I've always had an interest of the impact that war has on society as a whole. When I was younger, I'd play many strategy games and read many history books. Within these history books, there was always a war going on that defined the era. And within these strategy games, there was always new technologies to be procured to advance your civilization to said next era. But more recently, I've played Mr. Knapp's World War I simulation and grown a bit of a fondness for it. In the simulation, we were split up into groups and we each ran our own nations. We fought each other and we allied each other. And because of this, I want to do something similar. But of course, on the battlefield, there's always the goal of simply winning. Sometimes it's more important to risk limbs for lives. Prosthetics have been around since the beginning of time, and even though some have been crude and some more complex, such as the wooden leg or the welded metal foot, they've always been around. And of course, the military and the scientific community have allied themselves together once more to develop software to produce better prosthetics to aid in the recovery of these fallen soldiers. But sometimes it's better to outright avoid losing said limbs altogether. Back in the 1990s, during the Gulf Wars, drones were used, of course, to take care of terrorists in the mountains. The CIA more specifically used them. Though how effective they were, they did come at an expensive cost. But over time, technology grows cheaper and cheaper, and so drones spilled over into the civilian sphere. Police officers use them to get better vantage points of crime situations, and civilians just in general, like the average Joe, use them for high-tech racing, photography, and filmmaking. But of course, before drones, there was the bomb, more specifically the bomb to end all bombs, the atomic bomb. And World War II, the U.S. was in a bit of a pickle in the Pacific sphere, so they needed to end the war quickly, and they used the atomic bomb. This destructive atom was, of course, destructive, but the research that fueled it proved to be the perfect catalyst to launch fission energy into the mainstream. And so, fission energy, of course, changed this destructive atom into the constructive atom, causing green nuclear energy to power thousands of homes across the planet. Well, of course, this simulation is much involved in technology. I did a World War II sim. To start off, before I even got into the major parts of the simulation, I did a world building day. I brought together all these teams of people. They each chose their nations, chose their names, and they colonized this huge continent. But after that, of course, we went into production and came to a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet was no more than some random number generators and some data tables here and there. But over time, we refined it down into something a bit more palatable, a proper battle calculator. Though we did run into a minor glitch, which did cause us to basically start from scratch and throw everything out. We moved on to the board. We made it less of a simulation, more of a board game in the end. The board itself, that production took less than 3 hours in total, separated across like 3 different mornings, an hour each morning. I hand drew that. And then the pieces, well, first off, we broke the 3D printer with how much we produced. They actually ended up printing out a piece to replace said broken piece. So there was that at least. Here I am, after the board itself was drawn up. I'm just setting down pieces here to lay out where some of the troops should be, exactly. And here it is during our first beta night in Mr. Knapp's room itself. I held this during some of his class time, which he so graciously gave. And then here is the final night. This was the final hurrah. End of the night, only 4 nations made it through. Onra, Naptopia, Canada, and Chernobyl, with the dual winners being Chernobyl and Naptopia, though they did argue amongst each other who really won. Now, my stretches, challenges, I have to say the biggest one was probably scheduling, getting everybody in one room. Most of my participants were seniors, of course, so they had their own projects to do. So getting them all together, that was a hassle. And then my second biggest challenge, I have to say, was probably just starting from scratch. Losing that simulation was real heartbreaker, you know? So yeah, overall, I think these challenges, these stretches, they taught me to be a bit more patient. So as war, technology, and this project all go hand in hand, they all seek completion. War with the completion of a conflict, technology with the completion of a solution, and of course this project with the completion of my senior year, my graduation. once again, as Ron Perlman once said, war never changes. Thank you. My judges have any questions?
What caused the failure of your spreadsheet?
Okay, so basically we had mercenaries in the game. I thought it would be a good idea to, instead of having the mercenaries be one use, be unlimited use. That caused like a bit of a shield system kind of. So every time mercenaries were used against other mercenaries, it would continue to take from like the actual military each nation had. So it just completely drained their military, causing them to be unplayable for the rest of the game. Any other questions?
So did you have cards or dice, or like how exactly did this game go down?
Okay, for the final simulation night itself, we used dice and board pieces. The pieces themselves were 3D printed. That took a few months of production. We used specifically 6-sided dice to, 10-sided dice to determine the battle outcomes. Additionally, we had technological modifiers that they could use their Roy marks, their economy points to purchase. We also had resource cards, but they were later defunct in the final version. Yes?
What was the part that broke that you had to redo?
I don't exactly know which piece. I wasn't involved that much in the main 3D print. Yeah?
With the production of rowing marks throughout the school and the additional production lately, how are you going to account for the hyperinflation that's occurred?
Well, see, I accidentally created this rowing mark economy. So rather than allowing it to continue as the senior body treasurer, I think it'd be better just to kind of inflate it and get rid of it.
Well, thank you, because my rowing marks mean nothing now.
Any more questions? All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's what she said, too.
This is 42, yeah, that's what I got. It seemed longer.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's closer.
That was low quality. Low quality. 642. Tell me, how red was I when I was just kind of
You are